if I engage the diff lock, it takes a little bit of a turn and now both wheels are actually locked.
Do I go e-lockers or air lockers?
Your front and rear locker switches are up here.
Nice, okay. So what that means is I can lock both front and rear axles as well as I can lock the center diff lock. Now let me explain how that works. So do you really need a diff lock? All right, after much anticipation and a lot of patience, Dicerus is finally ready, and I've been told by Opposite Lock that I can collect it today, so I'm pretty stoked. So off we are to get Dicerus, bring him back home. You know, it's actually like having a child in hospital and you're about to go and pick him up or her up. And it's the level of anticipation and excitement it's insane. Those of you who are not into four-wheel drives or motor vehicles or that sort of enthusiasm, I think you probably, if you're watching this, you'll probably think I'm mad, but I'm sure the rest of you will understand. So let's go and get Dicerus back. In this video, Chris from Opposite Lock explains and demonstrates how a diff lock works. I explain the difference between an e-locker and an air locker. Why did I go with an e-locker instead of an air locker? What does it mean to be triple locked and the benefit of that? And did I really need two lockers? If you want to skip on ahead to a specific section, please use the time slots in the description below. So for the benefit of the viewers, especially who don't know what lockers are, what I installed is an e-locker. There's two types of lockers in the market. You get air lockers, which are activated by air compression, and the e-locker is all electrical. So you hit a button and there's a solenoid that activates the locker. Now, Chris is going to come back and explain in a minute how, and we've got a display unit here, and we'll explain exactly how an e-locker works. What I went for is the Harrop e-locker.
What would you like to, how would you like to go through
Okay, I find there's quite a number of subscribers on the channel who are very new to the lifestyle. So they have practically no clue what a diff lock is to start with.
Okay.
So for the benefit of those mainly, what a locker does and the benefits of having that. And then of course how it works in sort of a mechanical point of view.
So a standard car has an open differential, so which allows when you're cornering for the inner wheel to be able to spin at a slower speed to the outer wheel as it goes around that corner. The advantage of that obviously is you don't have an inner wheel that binds, so you have less pressure on drivetrain and that sort of thing. Standard diff, every car's got them. When you go to a vehicle with a diff lock, what you're actually doing is locking those wheels, so you're transferring 50% of the power to the left and the right, which means if a wheel was to leave the ground, rather than that wheel spinning as the wheel that's got the least amount of resistance, they spin both collectively. In the vehicle like your 80 series, means that if it ever lifts a wheel, that it maintains traction on the wheel that's got traction, and that other side continues to spin at the same speed. So you're not spinning wheels, you're not hitting the ground with the wheel spinning at 100 kilometres an hour and then snapping axles and that sort of thing. It's a nice controlled motion. You'll also find that you'll be able to, in a position where you do get stuck, flick the button, a small amount of power, you'll generally find you'll engage, you'll get traction straight away, and it will pull you through those areas without creating a huge amount of stress and etc. onto the driveline. So yeah, it's all about control. So less speed to get through things, more controlled pace, nicer on the vehicle, nicer for the occupants, and better mechanically across the board. The areas where you'd want to use them is going to be in like your hills and rocky sort of terrain, much less in soft sand. Occasionally you might use it in soft sand, but it's very hit and miss with that.
Yep.
And you'll actually find the vehicle will drive nicer with them out rather than
in sand.
In a sand type scenario.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, certainly in rocky sort of terrain.
Yeah.
Yes. If something looks tricky and you feel that you're going to be lacking traction, absolutely lock it in before you go.
Yeah.
Rather than lock it in on the fly.
Yeah.
So,
Now, once it's switched on, the lockers,
Yep.
what kind of speeds should you not exceed?
So I personally wouldn't go anywhere, we're talking 30, 40 kilometres an hour.
Right.
If you're at that speed, you've got decent traction there.
Yep.
Turn it off. Yeah.
Okay.
Also, anything that is a high traction surface. So unless you're in a terrain where you need the locker,
Yep.
don't run the locker.
Right. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, all that's going to do is provide a huge amount of binding pressure on your
Yep.
diffs and create obviously that danger of causing you
More damage.
drivetrain
Yeah.
damage.
Now, in my case, I've got two lockers, so I got front and rear.
And centre.
And center, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. So it's
so-
triple locked.
Yeah, so you're effectively taking your vehicle from a two-wheel drive,
Yeah.
so either front or rear,
Yeah.
to now being all drive separated. So
Yeah.
you've got quarter of the drive to each wheel,
Yeah.
Meaning that your traction is considerably better,
Yeah.
but on a high traction surface, your chance of binding is much, much greater as well.
Yeah, yeah.
So, really
So with the front lockers on, steering is going to be very,
Steering
very
is stiff.
stiff, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely, it's stiff.
Yeah.
So yeah, with running your lockers, especially with the front, you'll find you'll turn the front one on and off a lot more than the rear one.
Yep.
And yeah, that is all to do with steering. Even with the rear locker engaged, your steering is heavily modified.
Yep.
Because those two rear drive wheels are wanting to push you forward.
Yep.
You'll find that to try and steer, your actual steering radius or turn
Yep.
angles, you're going to be miles out from where you were before.
For most likely, I think the front would be the most least used, because if you got your rears right and then right tire pressures and so on, you should really be able to.
You'll find the capability of your car. You've probably you would have vastly increased it now.
Yeah.
And a hill that you used to hit, at a reasonable pace with reasonable momentum.
Yeah.
You'll be able to hit that, just over an idle. You'll be able to crawl through things.
Yeah. Fantastic.
With really good speed. That combined with your automatic transmission.
Yeah.
You
can literally crawl through, isn't it? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Victorian high country, for example,
Yeah.
high lift wheel areas, you're going to crawl through that, whereas now or previously you would have needed quite decent momentum to get through those
That's
areas.
right. Yeah. Excellent. Can we just see if this how this
absolutely.
works? Come closer and then.
So one button here starts it. So this is turning as a normal diff.
Yep.
And if I grab hold of this side, it stops. All right, so that's pretty straightforward. Now if I engage the diff lock, it takes a little bit of a turn and now both wheels are actually locked. So this is what you would be in that low traction scenario. Diff lock are off again and straight away the wheels can actually free spool and engage again, quarter of a rotation or just about, and it will lock straight back into place. Now, one common thing with the e-lockers that you'll hear is that they need to rotate too far before they actually lock in if you go forward to reverse.
Right.
Yes, that is absolutely a factor.
Yeah.
And the main key to that, as far as your driving style, don't turn it on and then plant the wheel, or plant your foot. Give the traction time to actually build up and lock into the diff properly.
Right.
When you're going from reverse to forward, again, ease on the throttle before you actually plant it to make sure that the diff lock is engaged. It is only about quarter to half a turn. It's not going to make a huge difference to you.
Yep.
And it's something that in 90% of times you won't actually notice it. So yeah, it's just, it comes down to driving style.
Yeah.
The only time we've ever seen a hassle with them is on a high horsepower machine where they're putting it from reverse to first in a quick motion and tromping the foot. Of course, that's getting half a rotation on the diff, then it's locking in. That will, of course, mechanical, it doesn't like it. It goes down.
Now, even unlocking, is that the case? You unlock and
Unlocking,
or just immediate?
Yeah, unlocking, just unlock it. If you're halfway around a corner, it does need the gears to unmesh to be able to unlock. So you might need to, it's best to unlock on a straight section sort of thing. Or again, in low traction area, one wheel will spin and it will find its unlocking point straight away.
Okay, great.
In the same scenario as the forward drive in, forward drive out on a traditional vehicle, you might find it will lock in low range in yours, for example. And you drive backwards and forwards a little bit to be able to get it to unlock. It's the same thing with the diff lock. You need those gears to be in the right spot to do it.
Excellent. Okay, perfect. I think that should be pretty good. If anyone's got questions, if you didn't understand that, please write to us or leave in the comments below.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, we'll get some answers across to you.
So yeah, your front and rear locker switches are up here.
Nice, okay.
As far as engagement goes, you can engage them when you're driving, but only very, very slowly.
Yeah.
And it's literally a matter of click them on.
Okay,
That's
cool.
all you need
Nice,
to do.
yeah. So that's front, that's rear. Okay.
Yep.
Nice.
And there's
Okay, so Chris did a really good job of explaining how a diff lock works. And just to recap, because I know there's a number of subscribers to my channel who are new to the off-roading lifestyle, and I had a few who wrote to me, and you know who you are, and I'm really touched after seeing some of my videos. You've gone and bought yourself four-wheel drive, so it's fantastic. Welcome to the lifestyle. It'll never ever leave you, I guarantee you that. And just a little earlier on in the video, Chris explained exactly how a diff lock works and so on, but just to do a recap, basically you got the two axles in your four-wheel drive. In any vehicle there are two axles, but in a four-wheel drive both axles are being driven. That means power is being sent to both axles. Whereas if you take an ordinary saloon car, or like a two-wheel drive as we call them, there is only either the front axle or the rear axle receives the drive through the gearbox. So the four-wheel drive both are driven. Now what happens is when you get into a tricky situation where the surface is very loose, or it's not even, or there's not, each wheel is getting different traction levels of traction depending on what it's sitting on, then the situations can arise where you get what happens is the one wheel would tend to spin more because it's got a lot less traction than the other. Now you don't want to be in that situation, because when you're off-roading you want to maximize the amount of traction, or whatever little traction you've got, you want to maximize that so that you can maintain your momentum, your vehicle's momentum. So how it works is when you have what's known as an open diff. Now you would have heard Chris when he did his when he talked about diff locks, he said open diff. Now what you mean by an open diff is where the diff is not locked, and it's pretty much the way it came designed out of the factory. What that means is in a situation where one wheel has got a lot less traction, that wheel is a lot easier to turn as far as the mechanics are concerned. So I'm trying to keep this as very simple to understand as possible for those of you who are not not mechanically inclined. So obviously, power goes to the one that's of least resistance, so that wheel turns, and that's when you get situations when you're off-road and you're putting your foot on the throttle in the hope of getting some traction, but one wheel keeps spinning like crazy, and you got no momentum, because that means there's no traction. So what a diff lock does in that situation is, if you flick the switch on, and in my case my diff locks are up here, as you would have seen, when you flick the diff lock on, the whole diff locks. That's really what it is. It locks, so that means power is distributed evenly between the two wheels on that one axle. So the one that's easier to spin, that's got absolutely no traction, gets the same amount of power as the other wheel which has got traction. So that way you can maximize the traction and get some momentum going. So in my case, I went and installed two diff locks. So front diff has got a locker now, and the rear diff has got a locker now. So they're both lockable diffs. I can have it left open when I want it, and then when I'm in a really difficult situation, I need locking, then I just flip the switch or both switches, and I get the traction diff locked as I want. Now, in the case of the 80 series, which is a full-time four-wheel drive with a automatic box, you also get a center diff lock, but that comes straight from the factory. So what that means is I can lock both front and rear axles, as well as I can lock the center diff lock. Now let me explain how that works. So in terms of power distribution, if both front and rear diffs are left open and I just lock the center diff lock, then power is distributed 50-50. 50% of the power goes to the front, 50% of the power goes to the back. Now, why would you want to lock the diff lock or the center diff lock? Well, sometimes you could be in a situation where the front axle has got enough traction, but the rear one's spinning or the other way around. And then again, what I explained earlier, power is sent to the place of least resistance. So in this case, if front has got enough traction but the rear has got absolutely no traction, you hit the center diff lock and all the power gets split. Otherwise, what would be happening is that all the power gets sent to the back, and then you're just sitting there, wheels spinning and going absolutely nowhere. So when you hit the center diff lock, then that equal distribution happens. Now, of course, when you switch it to low range, in this particular four-wheel drive, the center diff lock comes on automatically. So that's the purpose of hitting the center diff lock. Thereafter, if you want further traction, that's when you start switching on the diff locks in the two axles, rear and front. So again, once you hit the rear axle, then you get another 50-50 split, and then you hit the front one, you get another 50-50 split. So if you got all three lockers on, that means every single wheel is getting 25% of the power distribution. So each wheel has got the same amount of power being distributed, irrespective of what the traction is. So in that way, in a really tricky surface, you will get one wheel at least grabbing some sort of traction, and that will help you get your vehicle maintain momentum and get through that difficult situation. So I hope when Chris explained it, he was a little bit more technical, and I'm just trying to make it a little bit more simpler, non-technical as much as I can. So I hope that clarifies things for you and the need for a diff lock. Now the next question you might have is, do you really need a diff lock? And that all depends on the kind of traveling that you do and what kind of places you want to travel to. You don't always need a diff lock, but that's why I said, if you are one of those who want to venture into terrain that can be very unpredictable, undulating and going up on hills, and whether you have choice or not a choice, if you want to go up hills and like Victorian high country and so on, then having a diff lock is definitely a must. But if you're not into that kind of touring or kind of surface that you can travel on, then you may not necessarily need it. Now, in my case, I for a long time, Dysers never had diff locks. Dysers had what was known as a limited slip differential that came from the factory. So that's something similar to a diff lock, but not as efficient or effective as a diff lock. But what it does basically is, if it sends there was a slip of one of the wheels at the rear, then it would lock itself up. Now over time, with wear and tear, the limited slip doesn't work as well as it would have at one point earlier on in its life. Now in my case, what happened was, my front and rear diffs, particularly my rear diff, had come to a point where wear and tear was at a point where it needed either a rebuild or something else done to fix the problem. So I did mention this in my earlier video when I was getting ready for this. I found that it worked out cheaper to get my diff locks installed as compared to getting a rebuild done. So that was pretty that surprised me a bit, but because when you get a rebuild, it's back to original state, but now I've got it a little bit more upgraded than that, and at a lesser price. So that's why I went with diff locks. quite honestly speaking, 2 diff locks I feel would be, for the kind of traveling I do, I feel 2 diff locks would be overkill. And I've got a good feeling that if at all, most of the time, I would probably be working with the rear diff lock. But hey, I've got it. I guess I got the bragging rights to say that it's triple locked now. Yeah, and you know how we are. We spend so much money on our 4Bs. Sometimes some of things don't really make sense, but who cares? So that's how I ended up putting the diff locks. Now again, the question was, and that's what I started out with in my previous videos, was do I go e-lockers or air lockers? That again is a choice that you can do a bit of research and work it out for yourself. The difference I'll explain is with the e-locker, it's all electrical. So I hit the button up here, and a little solenoid activates the locker, which is inside the diff. Simple as that. So it's all electrical. On the with air lockers, it's activated through air pressure. So you have to have an onboard compressor, which it's a unit that comes with the lockers, and once you hit the locker button, the compressor comes on, and then that pressure then activates the locker. So you've got 3 switches in the situation if you've got front and rear air lockers. So you get the individual locker switch on off, and then you also get a third one, which is to switch on the compressor. Again, pros and cons. There's so much debate in various forums that some claim e-lockers are better than air lockers, and vice versa. In my case, I really don't think, it's down to choice, personal choice if you ask me, because at the end of the day, I really don't care what the process is, as long as the end result is achieved, which is in this case getting traction. I'm happy. So that debate goes on. I am yet to come across overwhelming negative reviews towards either of them. So they are both equally good, I would say. Advantage is you get yourself a compressor as well. So that compressor is not purely for the lockers only. You can use it to inflate your tires, which is always handy when you're going off-road. So you get that as well. In my case, again, I do have a compressor, which is a portable compressor, which wouldn't have worked if I wanted to use it as air lockers. And so I thought to myself, well, why spend on compressor and all that? E-lockers works just fine for me. So that's the whole story here. It's been a long, patient wait. Nobody's fault. It's all to do with these supply chain issues that we're all going through. So this whole thing started about 8 months ago. Placed the order for the lockers. These are Harrop e-lockers, which are manufactured locally. Yet still they have to go through the process of getting it manufactured, and also we have a massive local demand for 4-wheel drives and 4-wheel drive accessories, so that puts extra pressure on the suppliers. So it was an 8-month wait, and in that 8 months I never really did much traveling, amongst other reasons, also because this wasn't ready and I wasn't prepared to take it out on a long trip and put the already worn diffs to test, which is something I didn't want to do. But anyway, 8 months later, here I am. I've got Dyso's back, triple locked, as I keep saying. I love bragging. And yeah, and now looking forward to doing some trips and traveling. Even we live in the hills now, as I mentioned in one of my previous videos. So Adelaide Hills has got some really cool areas to go and explore, and then of course some long trips as well. So if you got any questions relating to this particular video, diff locks, and so on, please leave in the comments below, or write to me right through the website. So it's 4xtouring, 4xtouring.com. Write to me through the website, and I will answer anything that I can answer, or Chris at Opposite Lock is more than happy to answer as well. And if you happen to be in Adelaide and you're looking for 4-wheel drive accessories and so on, give the guys at Opposite Lock Windsor Gardens a try. I've been very happy with them. I've been dealing with them for a long time, and they also now do other kinds of motor vehicle servicing, so it's not just necessarily four-wheel drives. So give them a call, Chris and Vas at opposite Lock Windsor Gardens. I'll leave their contact details in the description below. So hope you enjoyed this video, and if you liked it, please give it a thumbs up, share the heck out of it so others can learn, and thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed already, please hit the subscription button and the notification bell. That helps me grow the channel. Thank you so much for watching.